Ohio State needs to send Utah a big thank you. The Utes beat USC to win the Pac-12 championship. It also knocked the Trojans out of the college football playoff and sent Ohio State in. We are taking a look at what Ohio State needs to do to beat the Georgia Bulldogs and if it's even possible for them to pull off this upset. Now, when you look at Ohio State, you're looking at a team that is very talented. CJ Stroud is evident of that. This is a guy who, despite the Michigan game, is having a really good season. This is someone who is a potential top 5 pick, a potential quarterback that is going to be pushing Bryce Young for that top spot to the top draft pick. He is someone that has been really good this year, over 3,300 yards and 37 touchdowns, and someone that could shred Georgia's defense. You look at who he's throwing to, Marvin Harrison Jr. We've talked about him all year, and there's for good reason. He obviously have over 1,100 yards and 12 touchdowns. This is someone who has made a number of highlight reel catches as well. He is someone who obviously has the name recognition. Everybody knows who his dad is, and that has been a big reason why I've talked about him, but it's his play that has put him near the top of the college football conversation. He is one of the best wide receivers in the country, and he's someone that is going to get a lot of attention from the Georgia defense. Now, flipping to the other side of the ball, Tommy Eichenberg has been, I think, the biggest improvement in terms of a player for the Ohio State defense. Obviously, having Jim Knowles on the defense as the defensive coordinator is going to be the biggest addition to that team. But Tommy Eichenberg being able to step up has played a big role as well. 112 tackles, 12 tackles for loss, 2.5 sacks. He has been aggressive. He has been very fun to watch, and he is someone that's going to play a big role in this game. The biggest threats for the other teams, Jalen Carter, if he has his way, Ohio State's going to have a long day. But if they're able to keep him in check, then Ohio State's in good hands. On the opposite side of the ball, Darnell Washington presents just a general mismatch for literally any team that they face. But you're looking at an Ohio State defense that doesn't exactly have anyone that can cover a 6'7", 270-pound tight end. So he's another player to keep an eye on. The last one is Keely Ringo. I think Ringo and Marvin Harrison Jr. are going to put together an absolute battle. I think you're going to see 2 future top 10 picks go at it. And that is someone that if CJ Stroud's not careful, Keely Ringo can bait him into picks, and someone that if I don't think that Ohio State's going to pick on, but someone that they definitely need to identify every single play. Keys to the game for Ohio State. The first one is going to be lean on your strengths. You need, first of all, you need healthy running backs to be able to do that, because a balanced Ohio State offense is one of the best, if not the best offense in college football. This is still a team that is extremely explosive despite the injuries that they've faced. Mine Williams, Travion Henderson have both gone back and forth in and out of the lineup because of injuries. If they are healthy, they are 2 of the most dangerous running backs in college football. If they're not able to go, we've seen that Ohio State has some options, maybe not as good as those 2, but still good options. Chip Trayanum came in from Arizona State and was going to play linebacker, played linebacker for most of the year, but has running back experience from his time at Arizona State. He is another option. And then when you look at Dallas Hayden, he stepped up in the Maryland game too when we didn't see Travion Henderson go. Williams went down as well earlier in that year, and you're looking at a guy who is a good 4th option. The other thing is don't shy away from what's working. I think one of the frustrations from the Michigan game is there were things that Ohio State was doing and really well at the beginning of the game, and they just went away from that. And I think that you can't show something and then just ditch it. You have to be able to go back to it. Even if Georgia knows you're going to do that, you still have to be able to find things that are going to work. You're going to have to find plays that are successful, and you're going to have to lean on that, because this is an offense that is really good. Even when people know the ball's going to Marvin Harrison Jr., there's a reason why he's a 5-star talent. He is someone who is going to be a top 10 pick for a reason. It is because he's really good at getting open, and he's also really good at, even when everybody knows the ball is going to him, he's still better than the guy he's facing. So don't shy away from things just because you think the other team might be catching on. Go back to those plays that might work really well, because you never know when you're going to need it. And you just can't hang around hoping that something else is going to work when you have a certain amount of plays that are already working. This is an explosive offense. They're able to make explosive plays. And a big reason why is they win the line of scrimmage. This offensive line is going to have to play really, really well. Now, it's not the Georgia defense that we saw last year, but this is still a really good defense. This is still one of the best, if not the best defense in college football. They just just might not be as explosive in terms of getting in the backfield, creating havoc, but they still have guys like Jalen Carter that are going to make your life miserable if you don't take them seriously. The second thing is going to be turnovers. Ohio State is +7 on the year for turnovers. Georgia's sitting at 0. A big thing that they have to do is protect CJ Stroud. They did not do that very well against Michigan, and that was the reason why they had turnovers. They were, Stroud didn't ever look very comfortable, but it also goes back to lean on what's going well. Go back to things that are working. If you have a package that works, don't just ditch it after one time. And it's, again, we already talked about that, but that's going to be something that they have to do. Ohio State's offensive line is one of the best in college football. They're going to protect their quarterback well. It's just a matter of Stroud then making plays against a really good Georgia secondary. Now, the Georgia defense is tough to beat. There's a reason why they are really good. They're averaging 12.8 points per game on defense, and that's second in the country. They're the second best scoring defense in the country. Good luck scoring on that. And it's going to be a slower game. I don't think that Ohio State's going to be able to blow the doors open. If they do, I'll be very impressed. But that is a good defense that you can't afford to give that team extra opportunities. This is a defense that is more than happy to take the football away from you. And if you are not playing your best, Georgia is going to blow this game out. They are going to take the momentum and they're not going to give it back. And turnovers are a big reason for that. So if Ohio State is playing really well, and you even flip to the other side of the ball, Jim Knowles is very aggressive on defense. He's going to try to create turnovers. He's going to try to get the ball back to his offense. If you give that offense more opportunities to score, they are not going to waste them. They're going to find ways to put points on the board, and that's going to shift things into your favor. The third thing is, if I'm Ohio State, if I'm Jim Knowles, make Stetson Bennett beat you. Yes, Stetson Bennett is having a good year. I think that he is better than he was last year, but there's a reason he was a former walk-on. There is a reason why he is, we kind of make jokes and memes about him, and there's not many people that are talking about him in terms of being an elite player. He is someone that I think is closer to a game manager than anything. If I'm Ohio State, I force him to beat me. You almost have to play like arrogant. Dare him to beat you with his arm. Dare him to make throws that last year we saw were kind of just like YOLO balls. I think that we've seen less of that this year, but there's still plenty of that going out. Getting after Stetson Bennett is going to force him to make really poor decisions or quicker decisions. Because if you're able to get to Stetson Bennett, I think that he's going to get rattled. And this is a defense that can be aggressive and then can get to him. Now, if you're giving up big plays, that's going to really loosen you up and be able to give Georgia plenty of time and give Stetson Bennett time to throw. But I think that one thing is the linebackers are going to play a huge role because they are going to be asked to do almost the impossible. To be able to stop the rushing attack for Georgia and cover Brock Bowers and Darnell Washington isn't going to be an easy task. But if they're able to create pressure and do some things that force Stetson Bennett to think twice or hesitate at all, I think Ohio State's in business. Because honestly, if you're going to force someone to beat you, you're not going to pick Brock Bowers. You're not going to pick Darnell Washington. You're not going to pick the rushing attack. You might pick a wide receiver, but if you have to pick the weak link, I think if you asked anybody in college football who Georgia's weakest link is offensively, I think Stetson Bennett would come up more frequently than not. I think that he is someone who, yes, having a good year, but if you have to identify one player to attack, to me, Jim Knowles is going to pick Stetson Bennett. He's going to create different coverages. He's going to create different pressures. He's going to send more pressure to really make him hesitate or think twice. And that is something that's going to help Ohio State beat Georgia. Now, the matchups, again, we've talked a lot about both Georgia and Ohio State and the talent that they have on their rosters. But there are so many matchups in this game that it's kind of hard to just pick three. First one, Zach Harrison versus Broderick Jones. Jones could be a top 10 pick. I've seen his stock all over the place, but he has the ability to dominate a game. Zach Harrison is a freak who can be a major impact player. And Ohio State, again, with that aggressive defense, is going to try and really rattle Stetson Bennett. A big player that can do that is Harrison. If Harrison is able to dominate, whether it's against Broderick Jones or Warren McClendon, you're going to find that Harrison is going to either be a reason why Ohio State's defense is slowing down that Georgia rushing attack and their passing game. But if he's not, then you're going to know why Georgia's being so successful. The next one to me, we talked about Keely Ringo versus Marvin Harrison Jr. And yes, that is a top matchup. But the one I'm more curious to see is if they line him. I don't know what Georgia is going to do in terms of if they're going to send Ringo to Marvin Harrison's side or not. Malachi Starks to me is the player that I'm very curious to watch. Julian Fleming and Emeka Egbuka, I think, are able to have big games because they're going to be lined up opposite of Marvin Harrison and or in the slot. And that is something that I think is going to be a big X factor for this passing attack. How do they do against Malachi Starks? Because Starks is a very talented player. He's extremely talented. He has a bright future ahead of him. He's also a freshman who has not played in college football playoff. These two receivers have had plenty of experience in big games. They've had plenty of big games themselves, and they're going to be the reason that this passing attack takes off because Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to go against Keely Ringo. And again, it depends on where they send Ringo and whatnot. But attacking a guy like Malachi Starks could be what Ohio State decides to do. And how I'm just curious to see how that goes from both sides, from Ohio State side and Georgia side. The final matchup, we already kind of talked about this a little bit. Ohio State's linebackers against Georgia's tight ends. Steele Chambers and Tommy Eichenberg have arguably the toughest matchup, I think, of anybody in this college football playoff. Yes, Keely Ringo and Marvin Harrison is probably the top matchup. And maybe that's the most difficult. But in terms of the amount that they have to do, these linebackers have so much that they need to do. They have to not only stop Georgia's rushing attack, they have to fit in their gaps, they have to get their defensive linemen in position. They have to cover these tight ends that are extremely dangerous up the seams. We talked about Darnell Washington at 6'7", 270. How do you guard that? Brock Bowers isn't that big, but he's still a nightmare to cover up the seam. He has great athleticism. We've seen some of that in the past, especially in the college football playoff last year. He is an absolute nightmare to cover. So I think that that's a matchup I'm watching closely because what are they going to do? Eichenberg and Chambers aren't exactly the best in coverage, but what does Ohio State do to kind of negate that? That is a huge question for me. That is a huge matchup for me. And I'm very excited to see what Jim Knowles does to kind of negate that or thwart those efforts. This is a big game. Ohio State has a second chance. They have new life. They have the ability to win a college football playoff championship. They have the ability to win a national championship because they found a way. Well, they didn't really find a way. The college football world gave them another chance. This is a team that I think is still very dangerous, even with the loss to Michigan. I think this is still a very dangerous team. Georgia is also a very dangerous team. There are things that Ohio State has to do that if they're going to win a college football playoff, they're going to have to shore some things up. They're going to have to fix some things, especially in the secondary. That passing attack for Georgia isn't exactly as explosive as Ohio State, but they can do what Michigan did to them, and that's going to hurt them quickly. But this is an Ohio State team that is very good. They are very talented, and they have the ability to win football games, especially on the biggest stage. So this is a second chance. They have the ability to do that. And I think with how college football has gone this year, there's no reason to believe that Ohio State can't win this whole thing. I think this is a very good team. There's some flaws they have to work on, but if they put everything together, this is a team that can definitely raise in the trophy at the end of the year.